At his first Prime Minister's Question Time in July last year, I asked the Prime Minister to reassure my constituents in Broxbourne that they will have a meaningful say over new development in the Greenbelt in their area. He said the government will work with communities, but this bill could not be further from that promise. We are seeing housing targets go through the roof in rural areas as Greenbelt protections are removed. In my local councils of East Herts and Broxbourne, targets are going up by more than 20%, and within Broxbourne District specifically, almost doubled. Protections for unrestricted sprawl around the villages I represent is extremely worrying to my constituents who live in those villages of Brickenden, Hertfordheath, Great Amwell, Stansted Abbot, St Margaret's, as their unique character, historic charm could be lost forever. At the same time, targets are going down in London, where they have the infrastructure to cope. Madam Deputy Speaker, these plans simply don't add up. In this bill, however, there is something I can agree with the government on. In the explanatory notes that say limited infrastructure is having a real cost to the lives of working people, and I completely agree. It is far too common for new housing to be built without the increase in public service capacity to match.
Well, my honourable friend give way on
I will
that
give
point.
way.
My honourable friend makes an excellent point on key infrastructure. Not only are we waiting for GP surgeries in my constituency, we also need a sewage upgrade across my patch. We cannot even have new homes put in because they cannot be attached to the sewage system in the existing state. So I think the point my friend is making is very valid, that until infrastructure is put in place, we cannot put the homes in these new areas.
My honourable friend makes an excellent point, and she is completely right that infrastructure must come first. And I do come on later in my speech. There is nothing in this bill that makes developers put that infrastructure in first. In Broxbourne, we've already had more than our fair share of development. Thousands of new homes have been built in the last few years. But new or expanded infrastructure to take the strain of our already overstretched services is nowhere to be seen. This is having a serious impact on my constituents. The Health Minister has admitted to me that patients trying to see their local GP in my constituency are more than likely than the national average to wait 2 weeks. Drivers are forced to sit in traffic as roads clog up, and I hear time and time again that parents are unable to get their child into the local school that they want.
It's true.
This bill before us seeks to make it easier to build major infrastructure. And of course, I support the building of roads, airports and runways quicker, but what the government defines as major infrastructure is way too narrow. What is major infrastructure to my constituents is whether they can get a GP appointment or a school place, and I see no mention of that within this bill. There is nothing about providing new powers for local councils to ensure that kind of infrastructure is in place before new housing is built. I had to fight extremely hard to get the NHS round the table to tell them that we desperately need a new surgery to meet the demands from existing residents. They wouldn't listen to me, and now the government is forcing us to build even more. In December, the Housing Minister said that he was considering what more we could do to ensure that we get infrastructure for developments up front. But where is this within the bill? Where is this within the bill? Because this is how you get existing residents on side, and you get people behind new development that we desperately need in the right location. In fact, local councillors are having more of their power and responsibility in planning taken away. This dilutes local accountability and removes the voice of residents in deciding what is built in their area, and it is an attack on local democracy. The Minister should be taking on developers, not local communities and councils. I've sat on a planning committee, and the reason why the process is sometimes so long and so onerous on the developers that they would argue is because they try and build utter rubbish. Some of the stuff that they put forward is utter disgraceful. I wouldn't want to live on some of the developments that come forward that they try and get councillors to approve. So of course we've got to have a robust process because we need to focus more on urban design. And simply making it easier for developers to get through the planning system, you are putting way too much trust on developers to build appropriate communities with all of the infrastructure that our residents need. And I will give way.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Does he agree with me that with regard to good quality design, It's not just society, but particularly the government and its relationship with developers that have got to shift the mindset away from design being seen as a cost, but instead seen as an investment, which we reap benefits in the form of better quality placemaking and better quality of life for residents.
And I know my honourable friend is a passionate advocate for urban design, and he makes an important point. Of course we've got to invest in urban design because it's the council and us and MPs for our casework that then pick up the pieces. If you don't plan a development correctly, i.e. with the right number of car spaces, then there are issues where people try and park their car. Our inbox get clogged up from all of those issues. The council then gets put on extra pressure with antisocial behaviour, etc., etc. So we've really got to think about planning the communities rather than just saying, oh, we're giving to the developers, they say it takes too long, so we'll make it quicker and we'll just rely on them to create the places that people want to live. Look, as I said, I've sat on the planning committee and I've seen developments come forward that are utter rubbish, and we need to change the mindset of developers, and we must ensure that we have good design. But the government aren't seeking to change that. They're embracing it by committing to a target that can only be achieved by rushing the construction of low-quality homes with no plans for those who will live there. The government needs to focus more on the communities that we are trying to build within this country, rather than specific targets and house building across the country. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, this bill reveals that the Labour government, have got its priorities wrong. Local people should have the largest influence over where new housing development goes and when new housing development happens in their communities, not ministers in Whitehall.